It's always a fun game to try and guess how much a wedding costs. Imagine you're in a barn. There's baby's breath in mason jars on all the tables. You got the vegetarian option. Can you tell I'm a millennial? What are we thinking? $200, $300, $500 a head? But it gets really astronomical when people like Anant and Barney, son of Asia's richest man, get hitched. The cost of 2 pre-wedding bashes featuring thousands of guests, performances from Rihanna and Katy Perry, and a yacht was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But it's not only money, there's also the environmental cost of all the jets between India and Italy, of all the gravity-defying floral arrangements and the multi-course meals. I wanted to calculate that. So I found a carbon footprint wedding calculator online, but the figures I put in were so high it broke. After some trial and error, I figured out that the Ambani Super pre-wedding may have released as much as 2,700 metric tons of CO2. That's the equivalent of more than 4 SpaceX flights to the International Space Station. Okay. It's impossible to figure out the entire actual emissions of an event without all the little details that I don't have access to. But with the help of Bloomberg Opinion's data team, I've created a helpful guide to help you figure out all the choices and their environmental costs for the kind of weddings that you and I will attend and maybe even one day plan. I'm here at Indie Bride London, a sustainable bridal store, to walk you through it. It can't give you specific numbers, but with some educated guesses, it will help you figure out the best options for you and your wedding. The first item on many people's wedding planning list is figuring out where it's gonna be. Are you staying close to home? That's very good. Somewhere in the region? That's not so good, but it's still better than the cursed destination wedding. Flights are by far the most carbon intensive element of any wedding. So picking a spot close to where your guests live is the most eco-friendly option. Even a flight of less than 3 hours will produce 300 grams of CO2 per passenger mile versus 270 grams for a gas vehicle. But remember, a flight of 3 hours will be covering far more miles than you'll ever get in your passenger car. And of course, electric vehicles and public transport are way lower. Consider even maybe renting an EV bus to cart your guests around. The guest list is the next most important thing when it comes to planning a green wedding. The benefits here are obvious. Fewer people, less pollution, and less of all the other stuff that's going to increase your carbon emissions. What if you halved your list? Got rid of your parents' friends? It's worth considering. Then there's the location itself. A wedding in a field might seem like a good idea. It's close to nature, it's very romantic. But actually these things are quite carbon intensive because you have to cart all your supplies out there. Established venues can be a much better choice because everything you need, all the chairs and kitchen equipment, are already there. Speaking of the supplies you'll need, less is more. No favors, unless they're edible. No confetti, unless it's biodegradable. No basket of flip-flops or special getting ready outfit. Next, what's a wedding without flowers? They're in bouquets, centerpieces, arches and choppers. But after travel and venue, flowers can be the biggest contributor to a wedding's environmental impact. Wait, what's wrong with flowers? They're biodegradable after all, and don't they suck up carbon dioxide? All true. The problem with flowers is how and where they're grown. Here's a wild fact. During Valentine's this year, 48,000 tons of flowers, fresh cut flowers, passed through Miami International Airport. In the US and UK, a large majority of flowers are flown in from the Netherlands, South America, Kenya, and Ethiopia. It's better to opt for homegrown flowers, which means choosing seasonally appropriate ones, or go for dried options. Clothing is honestly relatively low impact and easy to solve. Just buy secondhand, even if you're the bride and groom. Renting is also a good option, but some studies have shown that the emissions from deliveries and returns can outweigh the benefits. Brides can also tailor their formal gowns into shorter styles so you can get more use out of it. That'll help reduce the emissions per wear ratio. But the hard truth is, no one will really remember what you wore, but they will remember the food and the open bar. We've all been faced with that age-old question, chicken or beef? Meat has traditionally been the centerpiece of wedding celebrations, but going vegan is often the most sustainable choice. Even then, there are some foods that can be off limits. Avocados and almonds, for example, use a lot of water to produce. And if you do want to serve meat, then something like non-farmed game, rabbit or venison, is a far more sustainable choice. Visit the link in the description to take our carbon footprint quiz to calculate your own wedding's emissions. I'm not saying any of this to be a party pooper or even to suggest that weddings have a big impact on climate change. They don't. That relies with fossil fuels and the big companies that burn them. But we as consumers do impact trends, and many couples are already making eco-friendly choices for their nuptials. But if the footprint of your wedding still bothers you, you can always bury your head in the sand. Just kidding. Bury the carbon instead. Carbon credits, like biochar and direct air capture, pulls CO2 from the atmosphere and stores it permanently underground. It's not gonna fix climate change, but it can help genuinely offset emissions. I only hope the Ambanis did that.